This is Patrick Ray, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. We have a fantastic guest today. I'm really excited to have him because he is a doer and a helper. He's a former Division I soccer player. He led 130 investments into 115 companies since 2015 and recently joined Poseidon Garden Ventures as managing directors. Please help me in welcoming Patrick Ray. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
It's my pleasure. So you started your career, Patrick, as a financial analyst. You even worked in publishing, nutrition, and now cannabis. How did that happen?
That's a good question. There wasn't a big plan, but I played soccer in college, and I was always very athletic and sort of healthy and focused. And when I was my senior year, I was a TA in a business class, and the professor said that he had a group of alumni that had started up a boutique investment bank and venture capital firm focused on the natural products industry. And he said, if you had any students that wanted to have an internship in the summer, that, have them come and talk to him. And so I went and talked to him and said, hey, I'm interested. And that got me into the natural products nutrition industry. I was still in college, did an internship because, the spring soccer was a fall sport. And I didn't know what to do with myself all the free time I had in the spring of my senior year. So I took up an internship, and then that led me into investment banking and venture capital. I went out to San Diego. They got me out to San Diego, where we had a portfolio company that we eventually sold. I stayed on in my 20s, living in San Diego at the beach was nice.
Yeah, very. Where in San Diego did you live, Patrick? That's my home city, so
awesome,
it's important to me.
Yeah, well, at first I moved. It's important to me too.
Okay.
I will get back there. I started out living and working in University Heights, and that's where the office was. And then I, found my way to Pacific Beach, like so many graduates. And then we sold that company, and I was lucky enough to participate in a little bit of the upside. The partners were very generous with that exit. And I used every single dollar I had, every single dollar I got from that sale, and I bought a condo on the beach in La Jolla near Wind and Sea Beach.
Wind and Sea, a very popular surf spot. I think seals love it as well.
Yeah.
So why did you buy something that appreciates versus like a car or spend it on dates? I mean, you could have gone to Vegas at the roulette table. Like, why were you so prudent at such a young age, Patrick? I'm very curious.
You know what? I loved San Diego so much that I knew that I wanted to have something there to come back to. And I think San Diego is a fantastic place. I love to surf. I'm a surfer first and foremost now, and I live in the mountains in Boulder, right? So it seemed like the right thing to do, a prudent thing to do, and I don't know. It was I wanted to have a reason or roots in San Diego for the rest of my life.
Well, now you have that reason forever. So congratulations. You were young, in your early 20s, you get introduced to investment banking. Is that when you got the investment bug, or was it before then?
It was during that time. It opened my eyes to that world, the world of investing. And, in business, it seems like you can be on a couple sides of the table, the two primary ones being the ownership, the entrepreneurial side, or the ownership from the investing side. And I've been on both sides, started out on the investing side, and then moved over to one of our portfolio companies and was on the operating side. And I knew after I did a couple of years on the operating side that I wanted to go back to the investing side and apply some of the lessons that I learned and the experiences that I had to see if I could do better and combine that investing and operating experience into being a successful investor. So that's what led to the founding of Canopy Boulder, the business accelerator I co-founded with a couple other partners in 2013, 14 time. And that started the journey to where I am today with my old friends, Emily and Morgan Paxia, two of the hardest working, smartest, most experienced investors in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, by most experience, I mean, they started, 2013, which, it doesn't seem that long ago, but in cannabis, that's eons.
We say that we all started when cannabis businesses actually became investable.
Yeah.
I was at an ArcView investor forum in Las Vegas in January of 2014. And during a break, I turned around and started chatting up the two people behind me, and it was Emily and Morgan. And we immediately realized we had an affinity for one another's approaches to investing. It was sort of like an authentic, honest, we're not trying to financially engineer this. We want to build really companies and create a sustainable future for the industry, one investment at a time. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of intention there. And I think that, that was something that connected us through that time, and then to all the way to today. And when we started the Poseidon Garden Ventures group, which sits under Poseidon Investment Management, we realized it was really easy setting it up. Sometimes when you start a business or an investment fund, you're like it's a hard negotiation on every point. And for us, it was real natural. It went really fast. We were all on the same page. It was like, let's go, let's do this. And so that was really, really nice.
Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in cannabis investments around that time, or at least that's when I met Troy Dayton and Steve D'Angelo from ArcView. Actually, I was in Mountain View, California on a Zoom call with them. And it seemed like so much fun. And then you fast forward years later and you realize it still is a lot of fun, but there are pitfalls, there are challenges, there are the usual investment risks, and then there are some unique risks. How do you navigate those? Especially for listeners out there who aren't as well versed in investing as you, what do you think are some of the specific risks related to cannabis investing, Patrick?
Well, we've seen this play out in a couple of cycles. I think the big thing that for a cannabis investor is making sure you're not on the short side of a financial engineering program. We're Emily, Morgan, myself, and all the partners in Poseidon, we're textbook investors. We're trying to bring a professionalism and an institutional approach to investing. We're not. That's not the way everyone is. In Canada, early on, the CEOs of the Canadian licensed producers were investment bankers, right? They understood raise money towards a plan, raise money towards construction, raise money towards square meters and cultivation. And then it was like, okay, we got to build a business. We got to figure out the nuance. And those investment bankers typically were not the people to do that. So you saw these boom and bust cycles. So I think for cannabis investors, you want to make sure that there's a great combination, the right combination of financial savvy, but operational savvy. And, that was what I worked towards from the beginnings of my professional careers. I wanted to have both. So I could have a fair and honest conversation with financial partners and a fair and honest conversation with people working in the business. I think that's needed for, especially for what we're doing, venture-backed companies. You need that.
Definitely. And you've participated in over 100 investments in the last, call it 7 years. How many presentations or pitches do you think you've been a part of during that time?
A whole lot. For every Canopy Boulder cohort of 10 companies, we would typically look at between 200 and 300 companies. And,
wow.
Early on, we didn't know what would work, and we didn't know what was right and what was wrong about a business plan. But, fortunately, with the support of a bunch of investors, we were able to figure it out. And today, if it's a business that is in the cannabis industry, typically me or one of my partners, we've seen something similar. We know the limiting factors, the risks, the challenges, and then the opportunities as well. So it's been a great education and a great experience.
Nice. And I want to rewind a little bit because I have a friend, Brian, who is an alumnus of Canopy Boulder, who speaks very highly of it. And I know it kind of peripherally, but can you share with us the genesis of Canopy Boulder and what it does now?
Yeah. Well, Canopy Boulder, when I started looking at the cannabis industry with my partners in 2013, we were looking for a very efficient way to deploy capital, mitigate risk, build a diversified portfolio in an industry which was only occupied by startups. And very fortunate to live in Boulder, Colorado. This is the birthplace of Techstars, which is one of the top business accelerators, one of the original technology business accelerators. And we took their template, their playbook, and applied it to the cannabis industry as best as we could. And of course, evolved it over many years. I think it was like 7 years that we ran Canopy Boulder. And what it was is a business accelerator. We'd select companies and founders, and they could be, early idea stage. They could be MVP product stage. They could be turning on initial revenues stage. And then we'd make an investment and we'd bring them out to Boulder for a 13-week educational program. It was like getting an MBA, a micro MBA on your business. So every week we would do a different topic. 1 week would be finance. Next week would be operations, marketing, sales, HR, fundraising.
And I want to sign up.
Yeah, every week we would have recommended reading. We'd have topic focused speakers and mentors and education sessions. We have assignments. So by the end of the 13 weeks, the objective was to have a coherent business plan, pitch deck, financial model, hiring plan, org chart, marketing, sales. Like you were ready to be cross-examined by any investor, hopefully by the end of the program.
I wonder if you kind of accidentally hit on the future of business training. Like I went to business school probably 10 years after I graduated college and enjoyed it, but I was working and it took 3 years. And to people, especially those with entrepreneurial bents, what you described seems way more valuable. I mean, do you see something like that happening?
Possibly. I mean, it's a choice. It's like it's an alternative that, folks who are feeling like they want to go to get a business education, they can make that choice now. So if you think about it, you can go into debt and go to business school, and come out with big loans and a great network.
Yeah.
Or you can sort of bet on yourself, start a business, apply to a business accelerator, have them invest in your business. So you're kind of getting paid and get the similar education, but on something that you're very specifically interested in, not sort of general. It's like, hey, I want to start a cannabis technology company. I want to get surrounded by people who want to help me on this, and I'll learn as I go. That was sort of the idea of business accelerators. It's like an alternative business education. Plus, if it works out, you got investors and a network and a business. You're off to the races.
It's all in front of you. And Colorado, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, I think that was the first state to go adult use legally.
Yeah, it was one of the first states to go adult use. Because it was January of 2014.
It was a big day. Now you're working with a lot of California companies. How would you compare the markets of California versus Colorado?
Well, they're very different first and foremost, but they're very similar in ways too. The California consumer compared to the Colorado consumer has proved out from BDSA research, headset research. They have similar interests, similar buying patterns. It's not like in California, it's 70% edibles. In Colorado, it's 20. They're all pretty similar when you look at concentrates, consumables, flour, drinks. So that's one similarity. The other similarity is that, you don't need to do any research to realize that people really like weed and they want to consume cannabis. But I would say that there's a difference in terms, and I think it goes back to the roots of adult use legalization in both states. In Colorado, pretty much everybody was on board with going legal and being in a framework and playing by the rules. And that was Colorado. And as a result, we have kind of a well-functioning industry. It's not perfect by any stretch, but it's pretty well-functioning, growing, stable. In California, there was a lot of pushback on adult use legalization. I mean, I met folks who were cultivators up in Northern California and talked to them in 2016 when you're like, hey, it looks like it's going to legalize. How are you going to handle it? Like, I don't care. They're like, what do you mean? You're going to have to, like, you want to sell in dispensaries? Like, I will. And like, but it'll be track and trace. Like, maybe. I don't care. And it was just like, it was so different from an approach standpoint in California.
Have those differences widened or narrowed over the years?
Well, I think that in California, there's still a strong and influential legacy illicit market. But every day, I think it gets better for the legal producers. But there's still high taxes in California, too high, not enough enforcement on illicit operators. And, I love California, but it's hard.
Yeah, I was speaking last week, Patrick, with the CEO of Good Stuff Beverages, who, not coincidentally, he's in San Diego. And I asked him, what would you like to change about the California market? And he said, we're at a major disadvantage to the illegal market. Roughly speaking, there's about a 40% tax hit if you want to purchase. He's in the beverage space, so if there aren't as many beverages sold illegally, but flower is still a huge component. And if you're going to buy flower, especially in California, you generally people want to play by the books, but there's such a discrepancy.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see that changing in any decade soon?
I do. I think it will. I think every day we get closer to a healthier, more sustainable legal market in California. It's just, there's some things that need to change. And it's, California there's a lot of, interests, a lot of people at the table. And, I think we're at a time in our history as a nation where, it's hard to make change. Everyone's under the spotlight, and one group's trying to own the other group every day, all day, and it doesn't make it cohesive to collaboration and consensus, and just working together to do the right thing. So that's very unfortunate, and it's unfortunate we're in that time. And I hope it changes. I think a little bit of enforcement would go a long way.
I think so,
and a little bit of the relaxing of taxes would go a long way to make it such that the legal operators could thrive.
Sure.
And that's the environment that we need to create in California.
I agree. Now we're in an environment where there's very little enforceability of just selling illegally. And in some senses, that's good. I don't want a major police state, and I don't think a lot of people do. But by the same token, if you pay all the money to operate legally, you're kind of getting screwed. So I'm with you. I'd love to see that change. And another change that I guess many people were hoping for was after the 2020 election. It looked like, all right, we're poised for a green rush. I remember it vividly. I remember tracking stocks, and I guess probably through April, May of 2020, it was exciting. And then, the kind of floor fell out. Like, how important do you think federal either legalization or descheduling is from an investment standpoint?
Every day it becomes less and less important because the industry continues to grow and grow. States turn on, they work, the industry flourishes. And the truth is the states' positions and influence harden every day that the federal government fails to engage. So I think from an investment standpoint, I don't think when people pitch, and it's evolved over time, but today when entrepreneurs are pitching, their peak value will be able to be realized at federal legalization. We kind of take that slide out of the deck and toss it because
Okay.
it's something they can't control. We're not seeing any momentum towards it. Frankly, it seems like cannabis is almost too popular on both sides of the aisle. It's not divisive enough anymore
Yeah.
for any one party to use it to raise money. So they're kind of just like, they're like
Yeah.
kind of, it's not a priority. We got big problems, right, in this country that need solved. And those are not simple problems to solve. They're complex and they take a lot of time. So cannabis, it will have its time for legalization, and it'll probably happen on a Friday at 5 p.m.
I know. I was feeling skeptical this morning, and you're being a former soccer player. I was thinking of like when I was a kid, and you want to play outside, and someone's holding the ball, and you can't play till he releases the ball. And in a lot of ways, I feel that's how Congress is right now. It's like approximately 80% of the states have some form of legalization, way more than 80% of the population when you include, obviously like California. I wonder, like, once it goes legal and they throw their ball out, do they just lose their power? I mean, do you think there's something to that?
I think that if I'm a little jaded by the national and federal policy and politics. I think that again, it's not, there's too much support for it on both sides of the aisle, so there's not a lot of benefit. No, everyone, the Republicans are trying to own the Democrats trying to own the Republicans like every day of the week. But when how do they own one another? How do they win when they're both like in agreement? It's like this doesn't really help us gin up our bases and raise money because it makes people angry. So we're not going to.
It's the one bipartisan issue that, I guess because there's agreement, it pisses them off. That's the explanation.
It's like not a priority, because I mean, if this is, politicians, their number one responsibility, or their number one priority is getting elected, and then their number two priority is getting reelected. There's you got to reframe things to understand, I think, how it really does work in DC. And policy is sometimes like a tertiary issue, but power and money are usually number one and two.
Power and money and staying elected. You're brilliant, Patrick. I think the cannabis issue is a great example of states being laboratories of democracy. That was a hope. And probably by the time it's federally legal, like you're saying, it won't matter because all the states will have done it. And then there'll be different examples. Like California was an early adopter, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of sucks. And then Arizona is more new to the game, but I think that state is doing some things pretty well, and there's going to be others.
Yeah. Think about it as like, you remember in middle school science class, you learned about half-lives.
Oh yeah.
And, where like you cut it in half and you cut it in half again and you cut it in half again. And it's like an infinite.
It never ends. Yeah.
It never ends. I think of like federal legalization and just legalization of cannabis in that way too. Like, when Colorado and, legalized in January, we cut it halfway. We got halfway there. Like first step, big step. In California, like another big step. And then there's all these little steps, and we're like, are we getting closer? You start asking yourself, how close are we to this really happening? And usually what happens is with these types of things, it gets so normalized that then the politicians see that it's really easy to pat themselves on the back and raise their arms in victory because they're like standing on the finish line, it's just like a small burst of wind will like lean them over, and then it's done. And then they can, so it's got to be really easy and almost undeniable. The consensus, it has to be so great, because I just think it's no longer divisive, and the divisive issues raise money and drive politics in America today, unfortunately.
Brilliantly put. I'm curious, Patrick, what are some of the most painful lessons you've learned during your career?
Oh boy. Early on and during that internship, one of the partners pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Patrick, we really like you. But if you want to stay here, you've got to like step it up." And I wasn't afraid of hard work. I just didn't know how to apply myself in a professional setting. So I guess the lesson there is being close enough with your managers such that they feel comfortable telling you that, not, just sort of letting you die on the vine and then swooping out the back door. I think, from an investing standpoint, you can be too early. You can look around the corner, see the problem and the solution, but the market may not be ready to solve that problem or have that problem solved. So I think with a fair number of the Canopy Boulder investments early on in the industry, we're like, this is a problem, and they've identified this team and they want to solve it. Great. We go and check with some people in the market. They'd be like, yeah. But then they actually really didn't want to pay for it because they had a bunch of other problems that were more of a high priority they had to solve now. So you can be too early. And sometimes it takes a couple runs at a problem with the same solution to get it into the market and have it be a success. So timing is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those would probably be two of the.
I've never been wrong on an investment thesis. I have been too early several times. That's how I
think cannabis is one of those things where you get into the industry, you immediately see the issues and you hear people saying their issues, but there's a difference between identifying a problem and identifying a problem that people want to pay you to solve. Very different.
Very, very different. Well, what are some achievements, Patrick, that you're especially proud of professionally?
Gosh, I mean, I think that, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs that have come through Canopy Boulder and come through ArcView and come through Poseidon that I think through working with them in whatever one of those frameworks, we've seen them grow as individuals, grow as professionals. And that's really satisfying for me. I mean, motivation, certainly as an investor, your number one priority is a financial return for your investors, right? I think what I like about our team at Poseidon is that we're all very aware of and thinking about legacy and the impact that we'll have on the industry. Troy Dayton, as I'm sure you had heard him say many times before, he said, business can be a great agent of social change. I think the cannabis industry, that is like a strong thread amongst many of the entrepreneurs. Not all of them. No. Some of them just want to make a quick buck, get out the back door and leave you with your head spinning. But we spend a lot of time trying to get to know our founders and make sure that they want to build real businesses that have a real impact and also generate a great return for everyone.
I was listening to a different podcast where a woman the theme was social equity in cannabis. And her takeaway, Patrick, was in order to do all these wonderful things that we'd like to see, companies need to be profitable.
Yeah.
And it's not as heartwarming to hear that, but I mean, without money to dole out, you're not going to create the change you want to see.
Absolutely. I mean, it's business. It's not a charity. It's not a nonprofit. It needs to generate revenues and more importantly, profits to be sustainable. And if you can't have a sustainable business, you can't have a long-standing or a long-lasting impact or legacy or impact the legacy of the industry. No. And, we're trying to change society here as well as create great businesses. And those two should go hand in hand most of the time. They don't always do, but we want them to.
Right.
And, cannabis is, I think we're all very well aware of the impact of the drug war on certain populations. And, the cannabis industry is hard. It's not easy. So, these social equity programs, they're very well intentioned. I think they're doing their best to come up with a solution to the problem. But, sometimes the first solution isn't the right one. I'm a firm believer that we need to lower the tax rates, lower the compliance requirements and risks for this plant that people are selling, is proven to be not dangerous, and make it so that investors don't see this as a high risk investment. And that will open up a lot more capital flowing into a lot more people, no matter the color of their skin or their gender.
Beautifully put. That was spot on. And that leads nicely to this question. If you could wave a wand, and we don't have to go through the normal legislative processes, what one or two things would you want to see enacted in the cannabis business?
Well, I just want to see progress. So I don't have big dreams and big asks of the legislative bodies. I don't know. I'm a realist. I don't think they'll get there. So, I think that safe banking is let's pass that. That's a first step. Let's make it so that banks will take money in the cannabis industry for everyone, not just the super wealthy who have private banking relationships already with the major banks who want their business. We want to make it so that it levels the playing field for everyone, not just, the situation right now is multi-state operators, the most wealthy entrepreneurs who come in with a bunch of money, they don't have a problem getting and keeping a bank account in the cannabis industry. It's the people that don't have that wealth or those connections already. So that would be my first ask if I was granted the magic wand or wishes from, some Swami. So I'm all for that.
I'm all for that too. That's a good ask. And we're wrapping up. You've been very generous with your time, and I certainly appreciate that. But I want to know, what are you most excited about? What do you look at optimistically for the cannabis industry going forward?
I'm really excited for the Northeast to turn on adult use, and then I'm really excited for the South to start turning on medical programs. I've lived in the Midwest, the Southeast, New England, California, and now Colorado. I've been blessed and very lucky to experience a lot of the subcultures of the United States. And I'm honestly really excited for the cannabis industry to legalize more and more states, and to see, honestly, it change culture. It seems like it's what we need. We need, fewer drunken bar fights and short tempers and car crashes. We need more understanding, mellow, relaxed energy, great relationships. There's a lot of great side effects with cannabis that I don't think get spoken enough about. And I hope that through this whole journey that we realize as a nation that there's a preferable alternative out there, and it is cannabis.
Less punches, more music and hugs, I say. That,
yeah, right?
Absolutely. So where can people out there learn more about you, about Poseidon Asset Management?
Yeah, sure. So our website is Poseidon.partners, and I'm on LinkedIn, so you can look me up. Patrick Ray, last name spelled R-E-A. I'm very active on LinkedIn. And then, at Poseidon, we host a number of Twitter spaces, which are kind of like Clubhouse, but on Twitter, and it's sort of like talk radio. And we do them every Thursday. We talk about the public markets in one of them, and bigger company trends. And then I host one about venture cannabis VC weekly Twitter spaces. And I encourage, go find me at Patrick Ray on Twitter. Last name spelled R-E-A.
I'm going to do that, and I hope all the listeners out there do as well. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.